WNST. Some small schools everywhere, and everyone dreams of being the little engine they could. Certainly, it was UMBC, not UCMB, as some people were calling it over the weekend, that pulled off the miracle against Virginia, and what a beatdown it was. This guy is very, very familiar with Baltimore sports and Baltimore college sports and local small Baltimore college sports. He is the longtime athletic director at Loyola and the mighty Greyhounds. He is now sunning himself somewhere in the swamps of Jersey as the color commentator for all things Rutgers basketball. The pride of Milford Mill, we welcome him back into the Beltway. We welcome Joe Boylan back, longtime Loyola AD. Quite a performance, quite a show that Loyola Chicago put on, the other Loyola, and then, lo and behold, UMBC, the star of all things Cinderella. Joe, what a weekend, huh?
Great weekend, I think, for Baltimore basketball. It just shows what can happen. I mean, Ryan Odom, I know his dad really well, and he's got to be so proud, but what a great thing for UMBC. For years, one of the best high-tech schools in America. I mean, no question about it. I remember when Billy Jones, who was the first Afro-American player in the ACC, went there as head coach in the 70s and started that program, Division I. And to see them do that, it's just a marvelous story. And you know what? They were a shot or two away from getting to Atlanta.
Well,
just needed a couple of those shots to go down late.
That's what I was thinking, and I told a story, and I'm going to share some of these pictures this week. I grab them. You know, when Fang won that game up in Pittsburgh against South Carolina, beat the 2 seed, they then played that, I believe it was Saturday or Sunday, whatever day that weekend was, they played Texas, and they were in that game. They were winning in that game at various points, and they were literally, a three-pointer away from making that thing happen there. And I remember Fang brought his kids up to the studio. I was broadcasting the Sheridan up on Delaney Valley Road, Valley Center 2 up there on the wall, looking down on York or Delaney Valley Road. And Frank brought all the kids in, and I broke NCAA violations. I gave him pizza, Joe. There's pictures of that, so I know I probably could have gotten copping on probation at that point. But Fang was a little despondent that day, and if I went back, and I know I still have the tape of it, Fang was still beating himself up that they could have won. They should still be playing, And I would think, and that's going to be the hardest thing for Ryan and for the kids and for those who were close, because they were in that game Sunday night. They didn't shoot well enough. They looked tired. I think part of that was just what kind of a weekend emotionally it must have been. I saw Ryan and Jairus Lyles on the March Madness broadcast, and everybody's beating down on Steve Levy, trying to get a piece of him on Saturday and Sunday, and they had to go out there and play a basketball game on Sunday night. So, that kind of a weekend, I don't know that anybody's ever really prepared. You think you're going down to Charlotte, you're prepared to win, and maybe the coaches are, maybe they've scouted 8-9 or whatever, but when you win 16-1, I don't think you could ever have like a plan for that, right?
No, there's no plan for that. It's one thing, it's one thing to win the game. It's another thing to score 50 points against Virginia that only gives up 50 points a game. They scored that in a half. And Virginia they just destroyed Virginia. And I thought, the Virginia coaches really did a nice job. And I thought it was a class move by them and the players. I mean, they just said, hey, we just got beat bad. I mean, this is a Virginia team that, that beat Duke. And, everybody felt they were going to cruise to the Final Four. But I'll tell you one thing, what Ryan did, and not only did that against Virginia, but against Kansas State, his defense was tenacious. I mean, a couple of those non-calls, push-offs by Kansas, who knows where it goes. And I'm sure, you think about that. The one thing I would say, though, nobody enjoyed their win better than Fang did that win over South Carolina. He just took over that city of Pittsburgh. They still talk about him to this day.
But he was disappointed upon losing, and I know Ryan will be as well. And look, we could talk about the 50 points, and they only scored 43, and if you would have said 50, give it to them, and everything that happened to Virginia, and even going back to Vermont last week and hitting that shot, and what kind of a magic carpet ride it's been. But here's where the reality sets in, Joe. By the way, Joe Boylan joining us here, longtime AD for Loyola. Put your AD hat on now. Now, if this isn't UMBC, if this is any other Cleveland State or Florida Gulf Coast or any other small school, anywhere else, Winthrop, whatever it is, the coach is coming to be gotten, right? I mean, there's going to be a coaching convention in 12 days in San Antonio. Ryan Odom's going to be a guy that everyone wants to sign, right? Like this is what happens when you win a game like this. It's very, very hard for UMBC to keep Ryan Odom right now.
Well, I think, one thing about Ryan, he's got great bloodlines, and think about his dad. His dad was one of those people that everybody liked. I first met his dad at 5-Star Camp years and years ago. And when you say Dave Odom, people kind of smile because he's one of those kind of people. So he's got that when the people in the business knew his dad. And now, not only did he beat Virginia badly, but he followed it up the next game with a terrific performance. And so, if you're looking for a coach like that, of course these people are going to go after him. Now it's up to Ryan to decide what he wants to do, what level and how many offers he'll have and things like that. The one thing about UMBC and it's, the new arena and everything else, and I think Ryan's been around a long time. He's been around his dad. You want to go somewhere where you can win. And right now he's in position to win at UMBC for the next year or so. So we'll see. But people say, well, this will fade. This will not fade. People will be talking about this game against Virginia for the next 10 years, the next decade.
Well, that's the part of it that keeps coming up when I have conversations with anybody the last couple of days. It's this time next year, it's going to be UMBC, and remember that time and remember that time. Like the same way we talk about Chaminade 35 years later, or even Coppin State, or the Butlers and the VCUs and the George Masons that have sort of transcended that in the modern era. I agree with. I mean, there will never be a 16 that beats a 1 like that again. Maybe at a buzzer beater, but never like that again.
No, I agree. I mean, there's no question about it. You're absolutely right. And it's funny. Everybody was so excited about Loyola, Chicago, and everything, and all of a sudden it was, oh yeah, there was that other game, the other team that won too, Loyola, Chicago. UMBC just took over. And I think the job Dr. Obrowski's done there at UMBC in 25 years is extraordinary. Forget the athletic side, the academic side, what he's done to that campus and his vision for that school. And as I said, it's one of the best, the top 25 high-tech schools in America. It's just extraordinary. And you could see just a little bit that I saw from Jersey, he just loved every minute of this too. So I think it's a great moment for Baltimore and for the University of Maryland system too, that there are other schools besides College Park. And he's been saying that for years. Now he can say it for a long time.
Well, it is interesting from the educator side of this, right? I mean, there's the basketball side, the coaching side, the fan side, the let's make money and sell tickets in our arena because we spent all this money building an arena, and all that's there. And this vision that's come together, not just that, what Pete Caringi managed to do with the Final Four over there. I know you come from the Loyola side where the soccer and the lacrosse programs are always there, even though the football and the basketball don't generate a ton of revenue. But they have sort of prepared themselves for this at the new gym over there that's been open 6 weeks. Boy, the timing of all of this coming together, and I do find it funny, Joe, that I saw people out on Twitter, and educated people, sports writers, sort of bagging on UMBC as being some sort of latter-day community college, and I think to myself, you just have never been to UMB. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And as a guy like me who was never a nerd, I was a writing communication. I wasn't qualified to go to UMBC. It was too nerdy for me. It was too sciencey for me. It was too, my SATs wouldn't have got me into UMBC. The thought of it being a backup plan or some, downgraded educational institution just means you haven't had your eyes open and sent your kid over to UMBC at any point in the last 25 years, right?
I agree with you. When I got out of the service in 1963, I worked in Lansdowne, teaching there and then ended up coaching. And I remember the first couple of buildings they built on that campus because the Beltway was not completed beyond what is now 95. It stopped right there. And I remember going and seeing that campus gradually being built. And then, Dr. Obrowski went there, and he's had chances to leave. I mean, he could probably been at Harvard or Princeton or some of those places, but he believed in that institution. And it is one of the, as I said, it's one of the finer institutions, high tech in the country. And it's in the Baltimore, Washington area. There's a lot going on there. So I think it's, people who say that need to take a chill pill and go over and realize what that institution is all about. And as I said, I think it's great. It's great for Baltimore. It's nice for the city. And as you talk about Baltimore moving forward with all its challenges it has, UMBC is part of that, part and parcel of that at a high-level state university.
Joe Boylan is my guest, a longtime athletic director at Loyola, the Mighty Greyhounds. Not the Chicago Loyola, the other one here, the green ones here. And, of course, and he says Baltimore the right way. You know what I mean? You do pronounce it properly. You talk about what it does for Baltimore and for Baltimore basketball. It was about 6 months ago that the Dunbar thing came out, right? The 30 for 30 that sort of highlighted Baltimore basketball. This was a Baltimore story over the weekend as much as it was anything. And the maligned Baltimore and the rioted Baltimore and the CNN on, 3 years ago running 10 days of being here for riots and all that. This was a nice thing, and I think for March Madness and for the NCAA and for CBS and True TV and all the rest of them, boy, they really made it a big deal over the weekend. You often wonder what would ever happen if a 16 ever beat a 1, and I think we all spoke about it in those terms. To be in the middle of it, it was just good fun around here civically for people not like me who own a closet full of UMBC stuff because Pete Carinci has mandated that I do such over the last 25 years. But I think for anybody that wanted to have a little piece of the pride, there was plenty of that for Baltimore if you just put on the television. Whether it was the morning news on Saturday or Sunday morning, they literally were the toast of the country at a time when, let's be honest, we're all trying not to talk about the orange guy down in D.C., right?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that people like good stories, and I thought CBS did a great job with that. I mean, and they had really two good stories. You had the Loyola Chicago, again, an inner city school, with a budget of probably. It's interesting you're talking about, if Loyola Chicago would play Kentucky, they're not going to, but their budget is $500,000. Kentucky's $3 million, and that's not counting Calipari's salary. So when you look at what UMBC could have been facing, they could have played Kentucky, and it would have been interesting to compare those two budgets. And that's what's great about this 68-team tournament. You just never know. And the three-point shot has just changed the game. There's no question about it.
He is Joe Boylan. He is up there and watching Rutgers basketball. And I guess, Joe, for the move this week, so many of the top seeds taken out of this tournament, it creates an interesting weekend for sure this weekend. And now Loyola, the other namesake, winds up, taking on the Cinderella slipper here. But a lot of hurt feelings over the weekend, as we tend to always see here the first weekend of March Madness, right?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting tournament. I think we talk about Virginia getting beat by that. Carolina. Nobody saw that coming. They just weren't very good the other day, and Texas A&M played terrific. But to me, the game that really stood out to me was the Clemson-Auburn game, where Clemson was ahead by 40-plus points in the second half on Auburn. So, you just never know. I mean, Michigan State, Syracuse, you miss 13 shots, you're not going to win a game like that. But, as you look forward, I just think Duke is the most talented team, without a doubt. They have the most talent of all the teams left in the field. And it'll be interesting to see. I think they're better than Kansas. And Villanova is probably playing better than anybody right now. So that's on the one side. On the other side, I think Kentucky's got a pretty easy road. Kansas State is not a great team. They're a good team. And then Loyola Chicago and Nevada. Nevada can score, no question about it. I think another thing you've seen in this tournament, Nestor, people talk about depth and everything else. When you have timeouts that are almost 3 minutes, you don't need much depth. If you stay out of foul trouble, you can play six guys and still win.
Well, everybody gets a little bit of wind at the end of the game that, especially the kids at a UMBC where they don't have TV timeouts, they wouldn't have that. So, and it did feel long and breezy. These games felt long this weekend. I mean,
yes,
I know they're trying to make money and trying to squeeze in more commercials just so they can pay the kids more, right? Because, the kids make so much money playing basketball here, as we point out. I find it interesting that a lot of the blue bloods, the Kentuckys, the Dukes, Kansas. I consider Villanova blue blood. Whether even Michigan, I consider them a blue blood. Florida, they're all still involved. I mean, there's still plenty of blue bloods to make this thing a Final Four full of all that, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think Florida State. We played Florida State this year, and in the ACC Challenge. And I just thought they were really athletic, but really struggled to score. And they just beat Xavier, and they scored in bunches when they needed. And that was a surprise to me, the big surprise there. Gonzaga's pretty good. They're, they may not be as good as they were last year, but they may not have to be as good as they were last year. I think on that side, to me, that would be. It's interesting that Gonzaga last year, Gonzaga and West Virginia played in San Jose, and they actually practiced at my grandson's school, along with Xavier. So those three teams were out there, and so that Florida State win surprised me a little bit. But they're a tough, tenacious, defensive team, and they managed to score.
I can't believe I mentioned the Blue Bloods didn't bring up Syracuse. They're still in this thing. Purdue's still in this thing as well. And I know you and I got a load of Purdue as well as Michigan. Yep. Michigan State nowhere to be found. And, Purdue to me was always a team that we talked about them back in the preseason. Michigan was the team that came on so much during the year. Yep,
absolutely. John Beilein's really a good coach. Terrific job. And I think he's, again, they were on a roll last year. Now they're on a roll this year. Texas A&M is pretty good, though. I think Purdue's good enough to beat Texas Tech, but if the big kid Haas does not play, I just think they don't have enough scoring, but we'll see.
He is Joe Boylan. He is the longtime athletic director at Loyola. He's up in the swamps of Jersey doing all things Rutgers basketball and showing his Balmer pride by coming on here and giving UMBC the appropriate love. Hey, if somebody's going to beat a one, why not have it be a local team around? Why not a Towson, a Loyola, or UMBC?
Absolutely.
That's what makes this thing so much fun over all these years is that it's possible, and we'll be talking about UMBC for a long, long time. Long enough for people to understand how good it is and how close it is. Joe, always a pleasure, man. We'll stay in touch here. I know you'll be down for an Oriole game before the summer's over, for sure.
Absolutely, Nestor. Look forward to seeing you.
You got it. Joe Boylan, longtime AD at Loyola. The Greyhounds, not the mighty Loyola of Chicago. By the way, they kicked the whole thing off at 7 o'clock on Thursday night against Nevada. Michigan and Texas A&M, the other early game on Thursday night. And we'll all boo Kansas State for – no, we won't. Actually, we'll pull for Kansas State because they're playing Kentucky on Thursday night. You can learn more out at WNST.net, all the standings out there, as well as brackets and all that good stuff. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and Maryland. There's one right around the corner from you. Also brought to you by Pizza John's. I've been drinking out of my Pizza John's cup here. Got to get ready for some pizza this weekend. Maybe get me a cheesesteak down there, meatball sub. Bring me home Michelle to make it at home. My mom's favorite pizza, your favorite pizza too if you're from the east side of town. Get on over to Essex where they've been doing it for 50 years. Our morning newspaper delivers digitally to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's all powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life guaranteed. It also includes the entries for Laurel this weekend and the Maryland Jockey Club, also on the front of our WNST website. We're about 8-9 weeks now out on the Pink and the Preakness weekend, as well as about 7 weeks out on the Kentucky Derby. We're looking forward to that. I'm going down to Laurel for the Derby this year, putting a hat on. It's going to look nice. Cole Roofing is also one of our great sponsors, and they want to remind everybody, especially if you have a commercial roof, get someone up on the roof and give it a look after that wind we had 2 weeks ago. Had a lot of damage in the area. I have first-hand experience and pictures of such damage. Good thing I got friends over at Cole Roofing. They took care of me and my family. They'll take care of you as well. Learn more at ColeRoofing.com and Pfister Energy. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.